It's a good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's Millsy. Back with Hometown Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Updates, the show where I update you on the progress with my personal decks. And today we're talking about one of my favorites, and I'll give a fair warning. This is not a weak deck, and this is not a cheap deck. But today we're talking about Ovika, Enigma, Goliath. As always, that deck list is going to be down in the description below. Otherwise, I'd really appreciate it if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I'd love to chat with you about it. Enigma is it spells, and it's is it spells in the most Millsy way I can think to do it. Ovika is a 7 mana is it Phyrexian Nightmare with Ward 3 and pay 3 life. It says whenever we cast a non-creature spell, you make X 1/1 Phyrexian Gobbo creature tokens where X is the mana value of that spell, and they get haste until the turn. I don't know if I could dream up a more perfect is it spells commander than this. You cast a spell, you get tokens, the tokens get haste, and you get to do combat. And that's basically what this deck is trying to do. We're going to play all the great things that make Is It Spell Slinging a fun deck. We're going to try to get to 7 as quick as we can. We're going to play dumb spells that get us goblins. We're going to get in with our goblins, and then we're going to do the things that everybody hates and take extra turns to make our goblins hurt even more. At the end of the day, I love that this is a spells deck that can genuinely win in combat, and it's built to do that. It's built to just outswarm your opponents and get the job done. As far as spell slinging goes, there's a lot of ways to look at this, and there's a lot of staples that you're going to see here. Chandra's Hope's Beacon is a card I've always loved in the deck, because when you cast your first instant sorcery on a turn, you can copy it. Now, you get this option only once per turn, so you kind of have to do that first spell. But hey, if you pick the right spell, whether or not you get the goblins, right? You don't get the goblins for the copy, but that's fine, because the spell's probably great on its own. It's just going to get you way more value. Chandra can +2 to add some mana, +1 to exile the top 5 and let you cast an instant or sorcery from among them. This could be really great if your hand's kind of out and you absolutely need something. It's really important to get that involved. We do have ways that we're going to talk about later to turn our goblins into mana. So, sometimes just getting that next spell could be the thing to turn your goblins into more goblins and into an even bigger turn. Veyran is great here because if we cast an instant or sorcery spell, it actually causes Ovika to go off twice, making us more and more goblins. Renikis's Vow Duplication just makes a copy of Ovika, allowing us to get twice the Ovika triggers, meaning more and more goblins when we cast our things. I originally built the deck around Arcane Bombardment, a spell or an enchantment I truly love. When you cast your first instant or sorcery each turn, exile an instant or sorcery at random from your graveyard, then copy each exiled card with it. You can cast them without paying their mana costs. This is a way to just turn by turn build a fun just pile of spells that you get to cast for free, getting goblins every time and just getting value. I think the ideal end goal with Bombardment in this deck is to get an extra turn spell underneath it and just profit right at that point. Thousand Year Storm allows you to copy an instant or sorcery for each other instant sorcery you've cast before this turn. This plus Arcane Bombardment can create a lot of mess and a lot of headaches, but a lot of fun if you do it that way. The other thing that Thousand Year Storm can create a lot of fun with is Mizzix Mastery. A spell that for 4 mana will let you exile a target instant or sorcery from your graveyard and cast the copy without paying its mana cost. Or for 8 mana, you can exile every instant or sorcery from your graveyard and cast each of the copies without paying their mana cost. The important part of this card is everything on it says cast, meaning that Ovika will give us the goblins even if we don't spend mana on it. Same thing with Arcane Bombardment. And that's the cheat code for this deck, right? Casting big spells and not having to pay the money for it. Now, the thing that I learned very quickly with Ovika, if you want Ovika to speed up a little bit, to be strong, is that jump from about 4 mana to 7 mana, or 4 mana to 5 mana to 7 mana, or 4 mana to 6 mana, can be very difficult. There's a lot of ways to do it, right? If we play a mana rock every turn, then it's very easy to do. But there's also red spells that make treasures and draw you cards. And I've tried to put all of them in that I can because I think all of them help us profit and get to 7 faster. Pirate's Pillage and Big Score here on the screen both allow us to pitch 1 to draw 2 and make 2 treasures. Seize the Spoil just lets us pitch 1 to draw 2 and make 1 treasure. But the point is, here on turn 3, if we have a mana rock down already, or maybe even turn 2, if you played Soul Ring right down turn 1, you're talking about pitching a card, which we're not in fear of because we could potentially always get it back, to draw 2 and make 2 treasures. So you're either making the jump from 4 to 6, or you're making the jump from, most of the time, 5 to 7, and that's when you can then expect Ovika, right? Or sorry, 3 to 5 or 4 to 6, and you can get Ovika down potentially the next turn right after you play something like this. We compound this with something like Prismari Command or Unexpected Windfall. Windfall is just the same as Big Score, pitch 1, draw 2, 2 treasures. Prismari Command, draw 2, discard 2, and then a treasure, so it's just as good. It does also have the option to destroy an artifact if we need some offensive out of it. And then Rain of Riches is probably my favorite of these 6, because when it comes in, you make 2 treasures, and then the first spell you cast each turn that has a mana from a treasure has Cascade. It's always great to play Rain of Riches into Ovika, because then we get to Cascade for 7, and now you're just getting value on top of Ovika. And yes, the spell you Cascade into wouldn't, obviously you wouldn't get Ovika's ability for, but the point is you could potentially put down something very good and Ovika for 7 mana, and now be, just pushing ahead of what your opponents can deal with. As far as big old spells go, there's a lot of ways to approach this. I basically just tried to find what's the funniest thing that I'd want to put under Arcane Bombardment, or like what's the funniest thing I'd want to cast. Call Forth the Tempest is an 8-mana sorcery from Lord of the Rings commander with double Cascade. So remember, you cast the things when you Cascade. So you're talking about potentially up to 3, triggers of Ovika, right? Just on the cast of Call Forth the Tempest. And it says it deals damage equal to each creature your opponents control equal to the total mana value of other spells cast this turn. So there is a floor that you couldn't get back up to 8, but there's also a possibility you with Call Force the Tempest deal 10 damage to everybody's creatures, and now you've net 14 to 18 goblins off of just Call Forth the Tempest, and you're that far ahead on board. And Snap by the Morrow might look odd, it's a 4-mana sorcery, but you give your opponents the choice. They either exile cards from the top of their land library till they hit a non-land card, and we get to cast it for free without paying its mana cost, or they exile the top 4, and we deal mana equals to the total mana value of all those cards to that player. This is a hard choice for some players, but probably an easy choice for others. But the point is, I think we profit no matter what. We get the 4 Gobos, and we make our opponents have a choice. I'll take the first non-land card off your deck, because it's just more goblins, right? Or that mana could be a big factor in me determining where I attack this turn. Hit the Motherlode was another card that as soon as I saw it, I knew it was coming in this deck. You discover 10. Discovered cards' mana values less than 10, create a number of tapped treasures equal to the difference. Again, think about it this way. You get 7 goblins off the cast of hit the Motherlode. You discover 10 and have a chance to get 10 or less goblins off that cast. And then you net a few treasures that can just help you cast a spell on a future turn, right? Because they come in tap. But the point is, big old spell, that's a ton of fun. Indomitable Creativity can take our goblins and turn them into artifacts and creatures from our deck. We don't have a ton of artifacts, or we don't have a ton of creatures in the deck, but we do have some really important ones. So this can help us get either artifacts or creatures and get them on the battlefield. So even 2 or 3 goblins, right, can turn into some potentially really good stuff. I love Song of Totentans in this deck, because it might look odd, right? You're just making a bunch of rats, but remember that you make X rats and X+1 goblins, and they all have haste. And now for the more mana you put into Totentans, the worse your opponent's time might have. Because remember, we're not just pairing these goblins with just spells. We'll talk about ways that we're going to buff them as well, making them hard to deal with. And then Storm King's Thunder, probably my favorite Is It Spells card of all time. When you cast your next instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy it X times. You may choose new targets for the copy. Again, the copies will not cause Ovika to go off. But if you Storm King's Thunder into, an extra turn spell, the game's probably just over. But if you Storm King's Thunder into something like one of my favorite pet cards, Tasha's Hideous Laughter, where your opponents have to start milling into exile, or you Storm King's Thunder into a spell like Hit the Motherlode, now you're just talking about a massive amount of goblins, some potential other value, and you're just going to continually push forward. Again, I think the goal for Storm King's Thunder, which is going to anger some people, but it's honestly why I built the deck, is to Storm King's Thunder into an extra turn spell to probably just end the game on the spot. I can't imagine many board states where taking 3 or 4 extra turns with this deck won't just end a game, no matter what board state your opponents have. So let's get it out of the way. Let's get the booze out of the way in the comments. We're playing extra turn spells. We try to play as many extra turn spells as we can that don't exile themselves after we cast them, so that we can interact with them back out of our graveyard, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. But I had to put in Expropriate since it got that pretty new reprint in the special guest for Duskmourn. In fact, in a lot of ways, Expropriate isn't the worst extra turn spell that I think you could play in a deck like this. I think Time Stretch would be a little bit worse to give you multiple turns and like 10 goblins. I don't have it in the deck, but it is something I've thought about bringing back in. But Expropriate is rough because you're at minimum going to get one extra turn, and your opponent's forced the choice: either give you an extra turn or you get one of their things. And a lot of people don't want you to take a thing of their choice, so Expropriate just tends to brutally, right, to bring the game to an end. But we're playing extra turn spells. Nexus of Fate is great because it shuffles itself back in, meaning we have a chance to get it again. But we didn't build the deck to just take extra turns. Remember, we built the deck to make a ton of Phyrexian Goblins and ram them into our opponents. I think that's the thing to remember, is that this is not a gutter snipe you to death deck. This is a make a absolute crap ton of Phyrexian Goblins and run them into your face, and that's what I built the deck to do. Balmor, whenever we cast an instant or sorcery, gives our creatures +1/+0 and trample till end of turn. We can actually stack the triggers so that Ovika could make the goblins first and have them come in and then have Balmor. Give +1/+0 to each of our creatures and trample, meaning that those goblins that come in could still get the buff. Surge to Victory is probably one of my favorite spells in the deck, other than Storm King's Thunder. It says we get to exile target instant or sorcery card from our graveyard. Creatures we control get +X/+0 till end of turn, where X is that spell's mana value. And then whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player this turn, copy the exiled card. You may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. If you can Surge to Victory an extra turn spell and hit with even just one Phyrexian Goblin, and I'll tell you, you're going to hit with a ton of them. I've seen Surge to Victory end games just like that. I mean, I don't think any board can survive Surge to Victory for 6 or 7 extra turns. Because remember, you cast each of the copies, meaning you're netting more goblins and you're going into the next turn with more goblins. Coat of Arms, turning all your goblins into huge monsters, getting +1/+1 for each other Phyrexian on the battlefield. And remember that Ovika is also a Phyrexian. So when you pick Coat of Arms, right, when you put Coat of Arms down, it's Phyrexian, or Ovika's getting the buff too, because all those are Phyrexian goblins. Heraldic Banner may just be a mana rock, but since all those goblins are red, we're going to choose red, and now they're all getting +1/+0. Patchwork Banner, we're going to choose Phyrexian, so that Ovika and all of those goblins can get +1/+1. And then Strixhaven Stadium, I actually had the privilege of winning a game with in this deck. You can tap for a colorless and put a point counter on it, and if we get hit by a creature, we lose a point counter from it. But if a creature we control deals combat damage to an opponent, we put a point counter on Strixhaven Stadium. Then, if it has 10 or more point counters on it, remove all of them, and that player loses the game. I had a scenario where I had enough Phyrexian Goblins to have at least 10 of them hit all 3 of my opponents and knock all 3 of them out in the same combat. Now, that is a Magical Christmas Land scenario, but I think it just goes to show you what you can build a deck to do and why win cons like this are important. I think I still probably would have won the game either way, but it's important to show you that those situations exist. City on Fire, tripling the damage a source we control would deal to a permanent or player is great. Turning those 1/1s into 3/3s as bases would be really helpful, right? The more than we have. And then same thing, right? Shared Animosity, making them get +1/+0 for each other, Phyrexian attacking with them, just makes them huge, makes them really hard to deal with, and helps us end the game in combat the way we want to end the game. As far as recent adds go, there's a lot of recent things we added, things like Patchwork Banner. But the thing I think I had held out on for a while that I realized my mistake on was Battle Hymn and Brightstone Ritual. These are 2 red mana, 1 mana, or cheap red instants that add you a red mana on the hymn for each creature you control, on the Brightstone Ritual for each goblin you control. These are spells that are probably just going to help you extend your turn, cast more spells, get more things going, and just help to deal more damage to your opponent by getting more goblins. And then Rail Crackling Wit just feels right. You get the 4 goblins for casting as long as Ovika's out. Whenever you cast a spell, right, you get to put a counter on it. You can make the otters, but I think the thing I like about Rail the most is that -3 to draw 3 and pitch 2. If we're churning through our deck and drawing cards, we're going to inevitably draw lands we don't need. Rail's going to help us pitch them. And then if you ever get up to be able to -10 Rail and just have all your instant sorceries cast Storm, it's not going to take long for you copying those spells to just get out of hand and really brutalize a board with value. But I've said it before, and I'll say it again, no deck's ever complete. I've started to feel like I really understand Ovika as a deck. I built it, I've kind of churned it into what I want. But I'm always looking for where are the areas where the deck can be improved, where's the ways I can push this a little bit more. And there's been 2 or 3 cards that didn't make the cuts this last time that I'm looking at, and I think I see why I think they're good, but I'm just trying to find, really in all reality, the slots for them. We'll talk about Frosty the Wilds first. This is an enchantment that gives all non-human creatures we control +1/+0 and trample. I feel like it just makes sense. It would be very easy for our opponents just to throw 1/1s in front of our 1/1s. Or let's say we have shared animosity out and they're all 8/1s, where you just throw a 1/1 in there and then you trade, and your opponents are none the poorer for it. With Frosty the Wilds, now you run the risk of them all being 2/1s at minimum with trample. But if we have any of those buffs out, now they could be 14/14s with coat of arms and trample, right? And now your opponents have to worry about that. There aren't a ton of ways in these 2 colors to give all of them trample en masse. The only other thing I can think of is just individual creatures to get trample, not the whole board. So I kind of like the idea of giving all of the goblins trample. You still get 3 goblins for playing the wilds, and then you get that on all future turns. Kindred Charge just got that beautiful special guest reprint in Bloomburrow. And it's a card I'd been thinking of because you choose a creature type, and for each creature of the chosen type, you make a copy of it, and they gain haste, and you get rid of them at the beginning of the end step. My thought here is you get 6 goblins on cast. You then pick Phyrexian. You're going to copy every Phyrexian goblin you have. You'll copy Ovika, right? But it's gone immediately. And now you have double the amount of goblins you had, and it's probably just brutal in every scenario I can think of. My only worry with Kindred Charges is if it's sitting in your hand and you don't have any other goblins out at the moment. It feels kind of hard. Is 6 mana worth 12 goblins? I guess probably. But I'm just trying to find that slot for it as I'm working through my head. And same thing with Bria. Giving all your creatures prowess, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell, target creature you control can't be blocked this turn. It makes a ton of sense to make Ovika unblockable to threaten commander damage. But I think the thing I like about Balmor over Bria for this deck specifically is that, remember that because Balmor's on cast, right? If I cast a sorcery, I can have Ovika go off before Balmor and make sure that all the goblins that just came in get that trample buff. Whereas Bria, actually, the prowess won't go off because the spell already had been cast, right? And it's whenever you cast. So yes, it's kind of a cascading effect, right? Because then the ones that I just made will get the prowess the next thing that goes off. But I still think it might be worth it, right, in the grand scheme of things for what the deck's trying to accomplish. But let's get into our playtest. Keeping a 3-laner here with Arcane Signet, Big Score, Veyron, and an extra turn spell and capture of Jin Zhao. This is a great start. 3 plus the Arcane Signet into Big Score means we could get, ideally, Ovika down on turn 4 by my count if we can draw another land. So let's see what we can get ourselves into. Turn 1, I guess it doesn't really matter. We're not doing anything turn 1. Turn 2, we see Rain of Riches, which is great. That gives us another option. So now we will for sure hit through to Ovika on at least turn 5, if not turn 4, depending on what we draw. And there we go. There's our land. So now we ideally should be able to get into Ovika next turn. We'll play the Big Score. I'll pitch the Fierce Guardianship here just to draw 2. I make 2 treasures. I really like Fierce, but I think we have enough gas in our hand that we're probably good to go. Right, no matter what. I mean, I may end up regretting that Fierce Guardianship, but hey, that's okay. This deck tends to run really fast, and I'm not really too worried about it. Here we go. We got 7 mana. Get rid of the 2 treasures. Get Ovika down on turn 4. So now everything after here is just profit. We're just going to keep running forward and getting value down. 6 mana here on turn 5. We could hit the Rain of Riches if we want to, but I'm trying to think what I want to do. Perforos is great, right? Dealing damage as our goblins come in. Of course, the goblins would come in before Perforos, right? So that's kind of a bummer. But I kind of like the idea of just Rain of Riches here this turn. Making 5 Phyrexian Gobos. And then I'm just going to put this down here so we don't get this confused. Got 2 treasures, right? Off the Rain of Riches. I could play something. I could keep going. Like I could do something like Veyron and cascade off of it. But I kind of wait till next turn where I can cast something like Call Forth the Tempest and it's going to cascade 3 times instead of 2. And we could potentially just run into a world where we get to have a really big turn. So provided nobody took Ovika out, which remember is 3 life and 3 mana, which is probably somebody's entire turn to take Ovika out. If somebody took Ovika out, where we want to get Ovika back down with the treasures, because we would have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right, which could recast Ovika and we would still cascade for 7 and have a good time. But if Ovika survives that, we would just Call Forth the Tempest, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, only use one of the treasures, obviously, because we don't have to, we don't want to. We're going to get 3 cascades off of Call Forth the Tempest, 2 for itself, 1 for Reign of Riches, right, because we used a treasure to cast it. So first we get Isengard Unleashed. Damage can't be prevented this turn. If a source you control would deal damage to an opponent, it deals triple that damage instead, and we get 5 goblins. So there's 1, right? We've got 5 on the Call Forth the Tempest. 2 is Time Warp. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for that. And that's 5 more, so total of 10 for Call Forth the Tempest. And then, well, Impact Tremors. Impact Tremors is a little late, but that's okay. 2 more for that, so that's 12 total goblins that we just got, and 12 damage that Call Forth the Tempest is going to deal to all of our opponent's creatures. We now have an extra turn because of Time Warp, and all of our damage is tripled because of the Isengard Unleashed. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 goblins from my count. So I would just go, what, 6, 6, 5 on our opponents. 2 of our opponents are going to take 18. 2 of our opponents are going to, or one of our opponents is going to take 15. And now we're going to move into our extra turn, right? So now we can start taking advantage of that Impact Tremors being there. Play the land for turn. And I mean, there's a couple of ways we could do this, right? I have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 mana with the treasure. I could overload the Mizzix Mastery just to take everything back out of my graveyard and get 1, 2, 3, 4 casts, and the game's probably just over right there on those casts, because then even if somebody counters the Time Warp, I'm still getting so many goblins and so much damage off this Impact Tremors that the game is probably done. Or, you know, we just flash back Isengard Unleashed back out of the graveyard, and everybody's still got their fences down, meaning that we would just we would make 5 goblins because of the Isengard's mana value, which is dealing 10 to everybody. Right, so everybody that I dealt 18 to last turn now has 28 damage on them, and that 15 now has 25. And then we just, flip the damage like we did last time, and that should knock the table. I don't see a world where the table, survives this. We could just Perforos into Capture of Xingjiao if we just want to, do that. And then, again, an extra turn, and you can kind of see where this devolves into that. But again, this is what the deck was created to do. Make gobos, get into combat, but use our spell slinging, right, to fund the spell slinging. Use the spell slinging to fund the goblins and fund the combat. 3-lander with Commander Sphere, we see Big Score and Pirate's Pillage, and then Balmor. So I like this one. A lot of room to be had. Get the command tower down there. So if we can get anything down quicker, obviously if we drew a 2-mana rock, that'd be great. Otherwise, we're a turn behind where we'd like to ideally be. But again, here on turn 4, we'll be looking for a turn. We'll be here looking for a turn 5 Ovika, right? So we'll Pirate's Pillage. I was thinking dump the Big Score. Yeah, dump the Big Score. Draw 2. Make 2 treasures, right? And now we have Ovika next turn if we have an extra land, so we could do more than that. But again, the point is here on turn 5, play the land. Play Ovika, we'll keep a treasure around just in case. But now we can untap and have some fun. We see the Arcane Bombardment, so we're just, again, maybe 1 spell away from having some fun. Maybe we get to Walk the Aeons in our graveyard. We can, have a good time. Turn 6 here. Untap land for 8 mana. So, if I cast Arcane Bombardment here, right? This is what I would probably do to have some fun. 6 goblins. It comes in, that's 6 mana. I've got 2 mana left. I would use one of it for the Brightstone Ritual, because on cast, I'm going to get a goblin, but that's going to trigger Arcane Bombardment, meaning, either way, I'm going to get a draw spell underneath Arcane Bombardment. I really want to pitch the Walk to Aeons to try to get it underneath, right? Try to get it underneath Arcane Bombardment. But I think I also kind of want to hold it in hand, right, to make sure that I can get... because I don't think there's any way I can cast Walk to Aeons after I net all this red mana, right? Okay. Well, the big score, right? That's going to net me two treasures. So I'll pitch the Chaos Warp. Draw 2. We'll get 2 more treasures, right? We get 4 more goblins off the big score. And then Brightstorm Resolve, then I guess 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 red mana. We use, right, it and 2 of it for Walk the Aeons. Taking an extra turn, getting 6 more goblins, right? And then these all have haste, so we can take a big attack this turn. We have an extra turn. And then now all we need to do is get a Walk to... Well, selfishly, all we need to do is get Walk to Aeons underneath Garbled Bombardment. The game's over. But truthfully, all we need to do is get these buffed, and and we could start taking things out. Let's get the Patchwork Banner down for a couple more Goblos. They start going off screen. I think I might even sack the Commander Sphere here to draw a card again, try to get into a spell, but we do not. So we can Balmor. I need to... I guess the smarter move would have been to Fierce Guardianship my own Patchwork Banner, right? To try to get Walk to Aeons underneath or anything underneath to try to draw into more, right? But again, I think I've kind of established where the board state's at this point. Again, I could also at that point, I think that probably would have been my main, best idea, was Balmor, Patchwork Banner, counter it with the Fierce Guardianship, run the roulette with the graveyard, and again, that might have been my best scenario to get myself into the extra turn spell, or just to draw more. There's a world where I get the other Pirate's Pillage underneath Arcane Bombardment. Now I'm getting, more value, right? Drawing 4 cards, getting 4 treasures, and, getting myself into a good position. But let me know, what do you think of Ovika down in the comment section below. I don't expect you to love this deck. In fact, I expect a lot of people to probably hate the look of this deck. At the end of the day, it's an Is It Spells deck that isn't holding itself back. I know that some people may not like that, but it's a deck that I've mainly built to play with the people who know the deck. I don't generally tend to pull this out against people who don't know what they're about to walk into, and it's fun for me and for the people because they know what to expect. My play group and I have those higher power, decks that we can play where we all know what's happening. I very rarely play this deck without anyone knowing what to expect or what they're walking into, and generally discourage people from playing against it. I love playing this deck, but I know that it comes with certain feelings of extra turns and things like that, so I always try to put the honest foot forward and tell people what to expect. But let me know what you think about Ovika down in the comment section below, and I will catch you guys next time.